We're back here at Mountain Outpost. This is the Javelina Jundred. We are doing pre-race interviews presented by Hoka and the Feed. Chris Warden.
Andy Jones-Wilkins.
And some of the people we're interviewing here today are human interest stories, and some of them are elite level athletes. This is somebody who I think hits both of those marks here because not only an incredible athlete, but also kind of an interesting story and career as well. Caleb Bowen, thanks for joining us here.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah.
So Caleb, you're right. You are a human interest story and an elite runner. I'd like to start with the human interest. You are the head track and cross country coach at Marshall University in West Virginia.
Well, head cross-country coach.
Head cross-country coach. Assistant track coach. Okay, let's be clear on that.
Yeah.
And Marshall is also your alma mater.
Yes.
All right. And that's a full-time job, right?
It's a full-time job, yeah. It's recruiting, it's traveling every weekend, it's taking the kids to races, it's all of the above.
Right. So with that, you then pack in 20-plus hours a week of training.
Try to, yeah.
So how's your build-up gone for Javelina?
It's been really good. So I had to take just a little bit of time off from after Western and really just focus on getting healthy. Went to the chiropractor a few times, went to a sports masseuse a few times, just kind of clearing up some of the niggles that I had, and then just slowly progressed in volume. Didn't really do a whole lot of workouts until about 2 months ago, but things have been clicking, and having guys like Dan Green, who was on here earlier, definitely helps because we have a really good group that we train with together, and also having the men and women's cross-country team to train with as well, it helps a ton. So.
Caleb, you are on a short list of runners who are in this event this year that have a sub-13-hour personal best. Mm-hmm. And I kind of wanted to talk briefly about that. Your race at Canal CDOR a couple of years ago. For a race that went that fast, it kind of came down to the wire. Like it was like a 90-second or 2-minute differential between the top two. Yep. So you have been in a knockdown, drag-out foot race at the end of a 100-miler. Do you foresee that potentially happening this year if you're at the front of the discussion?
That would be amazing. That race was so much fun, but I will say that I was totally content with being second place. I knew we were running really fast. I knew we were sub 13 hours, so I was very content with just coasting it in. But my pacer, her name is Holly Ann Swan, she kept telling me, hey, you got to get in this. You got to never give up on yourself. You have to really keep pushing because you never know. You'll be so disappointed if you just accept second. And then all of a sudden, with a mile to go, we crest the top of the hill, the only hill in the course, and there was Jacob Moss. And we flew past him, we raced for a little bit, and then from then on, it was like a full-out sprint. It wasn't really, but it felt like it at the time. So, yeah, I don't know if I could do that again, but I definitely would love to.
Well, with this field, you just might have to. Just keep that in the back of your mind.
I don't want to bring up a subject that might be not so much fun to talk about, but we have to talk a little bit about the last time I saw you, which was after Western States. I had you on the podcast a couple of months earlier. I was fascinated by your story. You're getting a golden ticket, and your race at Western States was less than you wanted. I think it's
to experience some hardship, and that's the part that gets you really excited for the next one. So I had already signed up for Javelina back January 1st.
Did you really?
Yeah, I was all full in from the get-go, but it made me really appreciate, hey, you never know how each race is going to go, so take advantage of the ones that you have on your schedule. So I went full in with Javelina, and we don't know how it's going to go, but I think the disappointment from Western is going to be deep down in my heart, and I'm hoping to kind of go to that spot again, hey, I don't want to feel that feeling of disappointment again, so really just push, keep pushing until you can't anymore.
So going from the lowest of lows, as AJW was talking about, to the highest of highs, talking about basically how you got to Western States. You had an amazing race at Grindstone last year. What did you pull from that race? Obviously it wasn't the first time that everything had come together for you, but it's probably the most recent example of having everything clicking for a day. What was it about that day that you would like to replicate here, other than just running really fast?
So kind of the same as the lead up to this one. I tried not to look at the entry list. I tried to not dwell on who's going to be there, who's not, which is really hard for Western because that's all you hear about.
Right.
Oh, Jim Walmsley's going to be there. Like it's hard to navigate that. But like for this one, just didn't even look at it. Yeah, I knew David Roche was coming because he posted all about it. The months leading into it. But like, it doesn't matter. We're here to run for ourselves and just to be the best that we can be. If there's 10 people ahead of me and I still run the best I can, I have nothing to be disappointed about. I just want to have fun, come into each aid station with a lot of stoke, and try to have the best day I can. And part of that's going to be navigating the whole fueling. It's going to be trying to keep cool. It's going to be hydrating as well. And if I can nail those things down, then I can be happy at the end of the day.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I want to be competitive. I want to race hard, but at the end of the day, I just want to have a good race that I can be proud of.
Right on. And speaking of that, I want to talk a little bit about where you're from.
Oh, yeah.
Because I happen to believe that where we're from says a lot about who we are, and there's people who are from a lot of different places, and then there's people like you that have deep roots in certain places. And West Virginia, and it's Huntington, West Virginia is where I was a former Virginian, not to be confused with West Virginia, but got out there for some great classic races like Highland Sky 40 and the West Virginia Trilogy that is put on by Adam Cassidy and Dan Lehman, a 3 race up outside of Canaan Valley. Of course, in recent years, Rim to River has become a major event in West Virginia. Where does being from West Virginia fit into who you are?
Oh, it's everything. I take a lot of pride in being like a blue collar athlete. A great community in our state that we get, the club that we have, the hometown community, and show everybody what the Appalachian Spirit's all about.
And one more thing before we get it back to Chris. So who's out there for you? We talked a little bit about this with Dan Green, and we learned that Dan was actually ran under you. Is that right? He was one of your athletes at Marshall.
He was.
Are he and your sort of crew teams kind of intertwined, or?
We're sharing the same tent, so we better be. Yeah, we have several former runners. Both are kind of like with him and me, but Alex Meyer was a former runner. He's going to be pacing Dan for the last 2 loops. I have Logan Kirby, who's actually standing right there. He ran for me as well. He's getting into the ultra running community. He's run like a 4.0s 50K, so I'm really excited to run with him. I got my parents. They're kind of like the crew chiefs. And then a good friend, Lindsay Cook, who's also right here as well. We got the A team.
That is great.
The A team is here.
Well, I said this to Dan. I've tipped my hat at this point. I'm hoping for a 1-2 West Virginia sweep.
Oh, yeah.
That would be sweet to see both you guys back at Western States.
Well, and that actually, I'm going to follow up with the most low-hanging fruit imaginable. So who's going to be the fastest runner coming out of Huntington, West Virginia this weekend at the Javelina Jundred?
I think you know the answer. It's going to be me. I got 1 golden ticket sitting in my house. So.
Yeah, that's true. Like, you do have that aspect dialed in for sure. So, Caleb, thanks for joining us here. And one more question. What are you wearing this weekend?
So, repping the Roman Run. It's a small, running apparel clothing company that we have in our local Huntington, West Virginia. I'll be wearing several different shirts because I want to try to do the Jim Walmsley where you stick a couple shirts in a cooler and just bring them out. I'm going to be wearing hopefully just the belt, but I have a vest as well just in case. I have 2 handhelds I'll be holding for most of the race, if not all the race.
Shoes.
Yeah.
Oh, the Tecton 3s.
Ah, right on.
Nice, right on.
That's what I'm wearing too. I'll just go 3 times slower than you.
Well, Caleb, thanks for joining us. Best of luck this weekend, and we can't wait to see what happens out here in the Javelina Jundred course.
Yeah, thanks for having me.